Alan, you talk about doing things quicker, faster and better, but is there a process we can adopt that will help us to get to that outcome?
Yeah, that's a very good point, because the key there again is awareness and recognising opportunities, or a change in market structure and industry structure. For example, things like the greening area is very important. Imagine 10, 15 years ago if people said, that coffee bean wasn't grown in a fair trade area. Well, first of all, we probably wouldn't be having a coffee, and the second thing is we wouldn't even know what they were talking about. But because of the fact that people are going to remove or not support companies that don't follow those rules, if you are a coffee supplier who gets your coffee from an unfavourable area, then you need to adapt to that change in industry and market structure and go to a place where you can get fair trade beans. And likewise with labour, things like Nike and people like that who have been in trouble for their labour policies, which is publicly recognised. Well, the changes in the industry and market structure, yes, they might go to a country where they get cheaper labour, but they've also got to work out that there's also consumer changes as well as internal changes. So it's things like deregulation, it's things like the changing in the value of the dollar, it's supply and demand in certain areas. Though all those things can, and Warren Buffett is a classic of this arbitrage, where you can create value in one area by moving it to another area, and that's what it is. And again, it's all about awareness of what's happening.
So the companies that have competitive advantage in that space, are they the ones that actually undertake the innovation before the change is on them? Is that the key to it?
Hopefully. Yeah, I mean, the classic is the mining industry in Australia, where it is, pretty expensive to do mining here, and they've already recognised that with things like they're bringing in automated, the big trucks are going to be automated and radio controlled. I mean, from Perth, they can drive them off a screen and all that. And part of that is because they've recognised that if their labour cost or their overall cost of bringing that ore out of the ground is too expensive, then there is going to be a change in industry and market structure in terms of the cost of extracting. And they've already recognised that, and they're very, very forward thinking about it.
Is change inevitable? Do we have to change, or can we hold fast to some of the values that we're used to?
Well, you imagine if you were selling something here, you were selling bananas in Australia and they were $5 a kilo, and then you recognise that there was a glut of them in a country and you could get them for 50 cents a kilo and retail them for $2. Well, you tell me, if you had the same bananas, one was 5 and one was 2, what would happen to your business?
How important is it for us to take the pulse of society, to effectively tap into what's happening in the market, or to get the spirit of the times? Is that a critical part of the innovation process?
It's a very good question, because Peter Drucker identifies that as changes in perception, mood and meaning. And for example, when I was younger and we used to see people on television talking about the environment, they were called greenies or hippies or weirdos. And now the changes in perception, mood and meaning is that, combined with demographics, is that kids go to school, they get taught about it, they respect the environment. It's one of the major priorities they have, and therefore you would be totally out of tune with society now not to be seen as supportive of that. And a good example of changes in perception, mood and meaning was in 1956, Edsel Ford, Henry Ford's grandson, he launched the Edsel Ford, which is based on safety. And it nearly sent the company broke, because at that time it was seen to be macho to have a really powerful car and not to wear seat belts. And now that's almost unbelievable now. Even in my case, when I was going to school, there was a school tour to go to Albany, Western Australia, to watch the whales get slaughtered at a whaling station. Now, could you imagine if you got home permission certificate, and we both have daughters the same age, saying we want our daughters to go and watch at a whaling station? It's just incomprehensible. But that's what happened then. And so changes in perception, mood and meaning are dramatically important for companies, especially if they can be aligned with their values and seem to moving towards that direction, ahead of their time. And one thing I will give to Richard Branson is that he's always been involved in social justice. I mean, when he was 15 and writing his magazine for university, he was involved in things like contraception and sex education and, education about drug. And so he's not a person who's grabbed onto that and the environment and all that. He's always there. Now, that certainly hasn't hurt him over the years, especially because it's obviously aligned with his values, which is another big thing.
We live in a world that's very connected. Information travels at the speed of light. Is that something we have to be very careful about in the development process?
This is an incredibly important point. In the early 1930s, they ran the first advertisement on radio in America, and it was to sell some blocks of land. And when they ran the ad, they had sold every block they had in a day, because people had never heard advertising. Also, one of the main reasons Hitler got so much power was Goebbels was a brilliant PR person, and people hadn't been subjected to PR. Now, in terms of perception, mood and meaning now, and I said I teach at university people, young people now, are very cynical about corporations. They're very cynical about spin. They're incredibly smart. They've got access to social networks. There is no way you can trick them anymore. Whereas 20 years ago, every product was great and everybody had supported and all that sort of thing. So that changes in perception, mood and meaning has gone to social media, influencing people and being present in certain ways without pushing things down people's throat, because that's gone. That's done. And if you're not authentic, then they'll know about it on YouTube, they'll know about it on Facebook. It's a different world we live in now, and nobody can, no corporation or even small business can trick all of the people all the time. That's just not going to happen. Now, 20, 30 years ago, that wasn't the case.